All right, guys, I'm going to do something a little bit different here. A little iRacing GIMP tutorial. A couple of things. This is just how I do things as far as painting existing templates that iRacing provides. Not everybody does it this way. Some people are a little more creative with it. I'm just not one of those guys. Um, this is kind of made specifically for Zach, just for the fact I've tried to walk him through this a couple of times, and I guess his ADD is too severe to remember it. So we're going to put it down and record it so people can go back and rewatch it, figure it out. So anybody trying to figure out what we're trying to do here, obviously the iRacing template that they provide has some patterns. You can see that here on the screen that you can choose from however they want to be. So typically what I'll do is I'll start over on the iRacing side. And again, excuse my sniffles and hoarse voice. COVID is the reason I have time to do this, so we're going to mess around a little bit. But as you can see, you've got different patterns and such, and that's included in the template. I usually start here and pick what I'm looking for, different looks, that kind of deal, just so I get a general idea as to what we're going to work with. And then once I've done that, I'll go back. It'll load the renderer. Right now, it's just got the base. I went ahead and modified the iRacing template. Changed that ugly blue base paint and threw the Craftsman logos on it for 2023, so that's kind of nice. But let's get to it. In the paint layer, default, whatever. Using the wrong click here, but on car patterns, obviously you've got all these different options to choose from. I typically will just hide the layer until I find one that looks kind of cool that I want to mess with. We're just going to do something pretty straightforward and basic just to show you how it's done. And essentially what we're trying to do is we're going to use the RGB channels, essentially. As you see, this template is laid out with red, green, and blue. We'll use those channels specifically to outline particular parts of the paint where we want to put our own colors. We obviously don't want to go out and run around looking like this. Let's see if we can find one relatively straightforward here. This one will work. Nothing fancy, but it'll work. All right, so as to not get confused, this is, again, just how I do it. I'll go through, turn these all off, and actually, better yet, I'm going to go through and delete them. So you can either hit the X button or Control X will delete those individuals nice and quick. Obviously, don't delete the one that you're going to play with. Don't really need to delete that base layer because I'm going to add one later. Next thing I do here is I'm going to add a folder, and I'm going to call it iRacing Layers. And I don't know if they're really iRacing layers, but this is just what they provide us, again, through Trade and Paints, through iRacing, what have you. And I'm going to drag them all into here individually. This car decal, the color change logos, pit box colors, tape, pit board, all these miscellaneous items. Mainly because the step that we're going to take requires us to turn these all off. And rather than going down the line and turning them off, turn them on, turn them off individually, we can close them up here and put them in this folder and shut them down that way. We're also going to turn off this channel here, the turn off before exporting TGA channel. So the only thing that's really turned on is, yes, your paintable area folder, car patterns folder, and then your layer itself, which is the only thing that we've got activated. So once we've done that, we'll go up here, see where it says channels, click that, and you see you got a list red, green, blue, alpha. I don't mess with the alpha really, at least not for this part of it. But let's start with, I don't know, let's start with the red channel. So essentially, the red channel, again, is what you see on the screen here where it shows the red on the paint itself. We're going to go ahead and select that, not with our left click, but on the mouse, right click only. If you left click it, it causes a whole different issues. I'll just show you real quick. This is the left click where it highlights this channel now. We don't really want that because now if we go in here and start painting, like as for instance, like say you just pick any random color, say it's purple, I don't care. You'll click the paintbrush tool, and even though your palette says purple, it's going to paint the wrong color for whatever reason. It gets all screwy. I learned this the hard way, but very simple fix. Just go back and left click it again until it's no longer selected. Okay, you don't want this. You do want this. Okay. So going back to it, we're working on the red channel, so we're going to right-click this red channel, and we're going to channel to selection. All right. So essentially what's happened here is you see these little dots, okay? It's highlighted all the red, okay? So without clicking anything but layers, we go back to our layers, and if you turn these off, now you can see the outline. You see all this? Okay, cool. So we want to paint. Now, I don't want to paint on the car pattern because I may need to go back and use that for my spec map or something else later on, or to fix an issue that I've created somehow or another. So I'm going to add another folder or layer group. I'm going to call it colors. Now I'm going to move this down below the pit board. And in essence, actually, it does need to go up here. No, it doesn't. I'm wrong. Forget I said that, because all this stuff needs to lay on top of your colors. Your car decal, your contingency logos, all that stuff. Again, this is a layer stack, and the way I described it previously is, look at it from the side, a stack of pennies or quarters or whatever. Your spec map penny is at the very, very top. Your car pattern is the one sitting on the table. All this stuff is in between, okay? So if you've got stuff laid on top of another layer that you want to be seen, you got to have it in the right order. So colors being the base paint of the truck, and then all your fancy stuff, your decals, color change logos, all that stuff. It's got to sit on top of this colors layer, so on and so forth. Biggest trick to this, not really a trick, just it's being organized. Anything that you do that's out of the ordinary from the template, try to categorize it into its own layer group or folder for this instance, okay? So in this folder, we're going to add a color. So let's just, I don't know, we'll make it nice and simple. We'll call it black, because that's what's come up. So we want to paint this color black. We still have an outline from what we did in the channels, okay? I'm going to go up to my color palette, and it's not quite black. It's close to black. Take my bucket fill tool, and you see foreground, color fill, pattern fill, whatever. Just click it once here. And that'll fill that whole area that on your template is red, but now you've painted it black. Now these other areas we haven't painted yet. That's why the template still shows through, as we talked about with the layers. It lays on top. So if you paint a layer that covers up the bottom layer, you're not going to see it. All right. So we'll turn that off just for the sake of it. Going to hit Control-Shift-A. And now that will essentially anchor that color to the paint layer itself. You can call it an anchor, or you can call it just a deselection, however you want to look at it. But it's painted, it's there, it's good to go. So we got to continue on, finish out the rest of the layer. Again, you saw at the beginning of this, we turned off everything except for the car pattern. The reason we do that is because in some cases, there may be some reds mixed into some of these other layers that if we go to the channel selection with red, it will pick them up inadvertently. We don't want that. We don't want that to happen. So we've painted the red layer, so now we can go down to green. So same thing, right-click it, channel selection. It's highlighted it once again. Go back to layers. Now we got to add another layer for this particular color. So we'll turn this back on, turn the car patterns off. Down here again, at the bottom left, create new layer. And let's see, what color do we want to go with? Yeah, just for the sake of it, let's go with HBR orange. So we'll go up into our color palette. HBR orange, for those of you keeping track at home, it's F75200. Now you know the secret sauce. Not really that big a deal. All right, so HBR orange, we're on that layer. So again, we're just going to click inside of it, get that painted. Again, Control-Shift-A to deselect the outline. And now we've got one more layer to go. Turn the colors off again. Turn the car patterns back on. Back up the channels. Now we're going to work with the blue. Right-click, channel to selection. Go back to layers. Turn off your pattern. Now, what color are we going to go with? I think we're going to go with like a typical gray. It's not a fancy paint scheme. I won't be using this for anything, but turn that back on. Let's find a gray that works. That'll work. And then we just fill here. Control Shift A. And now you see that it's all filled nice. Now we can also go back, for the sake of it, turn this back on for your outline. Turn iRacing layers back on. And there you have it. We'll go up here, export as. I've already got this laid out. Car underscore num underscore, and then your iRacing ID number. So you see in the renderer, it's got the old paint. We're going to export it. And now it's changed it up. Okay. The painting we just did, it's all there. It's all happy. Beautiful. Again, this is just how I do it. There's definitely other ways to do it. I don't know of them. I'm not a GIMP expert by any means. But the nice thing about doing it this way is if you look nice and close here, these edges, a lot of times if you just did the fuzzy select tool or the select by color tool, which if you look at it here in GIMP is right up here, you've got fuzzy select or select by color. I usually do select by color if I need to use it, but the nice thing about doing it this way is you don't have any of those artifact colors. There is a little tiny one here. I'm not sure what's causing that, but we can fix that easy enough later on. Not what this particular tutorial is about, but definitely easy to do. Now, you can also use this same method to do your spec map. Now, spec mapping, some people are completely confused about it. I'll be honest, the new blue channel clear coat, I haven't really figured out what the deal with that is as of yet. But typically, I'll open these up. And the first thing that I do, which right or wrong, it's just how I do it, I will absolutely erase this entire red channel. Now, the red channel is your reflectivity. So if you go to max reflectivity, it's going to be full on chrome. And I'm not going to leave this erased like this. There'll be parts of the truck that I end up changing up and adding some reflectivity to it. But we'll cover that in a minute here. So I've erased all this, no reflectivity. Now I'm going to go down to my base paint for the green channel, which is your matte or your roughness, so to speak. And I'm going to paint this all green. Some form of green. Typically, they say start between 0 and 255. I think 255 is insane. You can do it. It doesn't look natural at all. I usually start, usually 30 to 50 is kind of where I land, but we'll go 40 here today. And then just bucket fill it. Now, same thing. Now we have to go to File, Export As, because we got to change it up from car underscore num to car underscore spec. Otherwise, the system's going to be like, what are you trying to do to me here? Oops. For some reason, it doesn't like uppercase either. So we'll export that. And keep a close eye here. Before I do this, you look at some of the reflectivity. There you got the shiny on the B post here. We're going to export, and it's going to change. Now you see it's all nice and matte. The whole truck right now is matte, which we don't want. But the dark colors, like the blacks and the grays, I do kind of like it that way. Again, it's preference, but that's kind of how I roll typically. Now, the HBR orange, I want to make that pretty shiny. And again, that's just a preference thing. But going back to GIMP, we'll go back to our spec map. And effectively, we're going to go back to our red channel because that's where our reflectivity comes in. But before we can do that, we got to tell it where to outline. So just like we did early on when we were painting the truck itself, we can use these car patterns and the channel selection tool. Not really a tool, I guess. It's more of a tab, but whatever. You get the idea. So same thing, though. We're going to turn off our iRacing layers. We'll turn off our colors just because we don't want to confuse anything. Turn off before exporting layer. And then we're back in our car pattern. Click channels. Now, if we remember, I think it was the green channel that we selected our orange on. So we'll channel that to selection. Go back to our layers. Go back to the spec map. Turn it on. And you see it's all layered out here. It's lined out. So we got to make sure that we're on our red channel. I know this all looks green, but remember we erased all the contents of that red base paint number 2. So just for comparison purposes, I'm going to go full reflectivity here at 255 of the red channel. And then everything we've selected to highlight, you paint red. Okay? So then same thing, double check, make sure we're on the spec map. Looks like we are. And you'll see it change here in a moment. Yes, now you see everything is full reflectivity on the orange side, which is kind of overkill. I don't know. It's kind of cool. It's kind of not. Whatever. Who knows? But that's how you would do it. Now, as a for instance, you would do this the exact same way. Like if this was actually white paint and we went full reflectivity, it would make all of this paint full chrome, like a mirror image. Okay. White with 100% reflectivity is actually a mirror. Okay. So just keep that in mind. In fact, we can probably, I'm not going to mess with it. I can show it with the numbers when we do the number stuff. So that is how we spec map, at least how I spec map. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's really easy to do. However, you see here in the contingency decals how you got some layers of the spec that cross over these stickers where this is matte and this is full reflectivity. It's not how we want it to look, of course, but you can go in and change that very simply. Just as for instance, before we go further, we'll go Control-Shift-A to anchor everything. All right, so what I would normally do in this instance, turn colors back on, iRacing layers, car patterns off. In fact, actually, I turned colors off for this just so it makes it easier to outline what I'm trying to do. And essentially, here's why. Let's see, which was Cooks, I think, on the driver's side, passenger side. So I'm going to outline this. This is our tool on the upper left. You've got your rectangle select or an ellipse select. This one, obviously, we're going to go rectangle. It's not perfect because the corners are round. In fact, you could, in this one, actually, I probably would use our path tool, which is this one right here. So we'll do that. And the way it works, it's pretty straightforward, actually. I just zoom in as best I can, get a better look at things. And just go dot to dot to dot to dot. And then this is a straight line, so you can just go all the way to this, and then dot to dot, to pixel to pixel to pixel, down to here. And then hit enter to finish it. Okay. So if we Control-Shift-J, now we're wide out here. I'll zoom back in a little bit so you can see it. But you see it's all outlined nice. But now we can go up to our spec map in the same spot. Now you can see the spec map. The red, remember, is our full reflectivity. The green, which is a layer underneath all this, is our base paint for the roughness. So I'm going to hit the eraser. Shrink it down a little bit. Doesn't need to be huge, and just erase that. Now you see that square is now cut out as a green square, which means that decal will no longer have that part reflective, part not. Okay. So same thing. We'll go back, export the spec map, and you'll see that Cooks sticker is no longer screwed up. All right. You do that the same way for all these. This SKF, this Dart, whatever stickers you have, even the stuff that you put on the truck yourself, whether it's your numbers, any sponsor decals, if the spec map intersects it and it looks kind of wonky, you got to trace it out and then delete or erase, so to speak, on your spec map accordingly. So that's just that example. We'll continue on. So we'll turn off the spec. Go back to colors. All right, so everything's there. Now, one thing I wanted to show, and I don't think I had a number prepared just yet. Let me see if I can track one down here. I bet you I can. Throwing numbers on these cars are pretty straightforward, or trucks. Obviously, you can put them wherever you want, especially if you're doing a custom number paint. But iRacing does provide number block locations, as you see over here. If you turn the spec off, at least. So, yeah, these green boxes. It's all in this red group here. All right. I'm getting a text message here. Wonder if it's the girlfriend asking if she can come in. Okay, nope, we're good there. Yes, our whole household is sick with COVID. Well, I'm the only one that's got a positive test, but we're all sick. Never you mind. All right, so number block locations on. You got the roof, driver, passenger, right side, however you want to put it, pit board. You got the right front on the bumper, right rear on the bumper, so on and so forth. Now, typically it's straightforward. Again, I do like to add another folder. We talked about that. Just click your paintable area. It's all going to ride on top. Okay, so your numbers are going to sit on top of everything. So, new layer group. I like to call it custom numbers. If you're doing like team paints, where everybody's got pretty much the same paint, you don't see it so much in NASCAR, but I'll put custom numbers and then that particular driver name so that I know that, okay, it's my truck, it's the 6 or the 06, or maybe it's Brian Rose, it's the 89. I can just simply swap out that number or turn off that folder individually, and then boom, new paint, done to go. But custom numbers, and I'm only really going to show you the roof for now. Let's see what I can find here. All right, well, this isn't quite the right number, but for what I'm trying to do, it's going to work nice. So I'm going to bring in the 88. Now, what happens a lot, you could just scale this down. I hit Shift S as the shortcut, or you go up here and use your scale tool directly. And then you can drag it in. But you see, you got to make it super tiny. And it just doesn't look right. It ends up looking kind of wonky. And here, I'll shrink it down so it fits in the box. Turn off our number block, and then export that out just to show you what it looks like in the renderer. It just doesn't, it just looks wrong. Now, I also didn't rotate it properly, but size-wise, it's just not right, right? Right. Okay. Yes, this is a recording. Nobody's really listening to me. We're not live streaming. Though I probably should have. Didn't even think about it, but all right. So to fix that, I'll take the number away here. There, it's gone. Go back to GIMP. We still got our custom number folder. We'll drag the 88 back in. Now, I do want to rotate it, so Shift R is your shortcut key. 180. It's on ovals. The number always needs to face the infield, not the spotter. I don't know why, but that's just the rules that they use. Now, again, we could just scale it, Shift S, and shrink it, but again, it makes it too tiny. So we don't want to do that. So we'll reset that, and then we'll go back up here and click and hold this tool where you would find your scale. But go to Perspective. Shortcut is Shift P. And now you'll see you've got these little squares added to each corner. All right? So before we do anything else, let's turn our number blocks back on. You see the green just popped up? It's all hidden underneath the roof here. And we've already rotated this number. Always rotate first. Don't rotate after the fact because you lose some image quality resolution when you do that. But take this first lower corner and just drag it to this bottom corner. And do it with the right side as well. Now it looks really wonky, but don't worry, it'll get better. So on and so forth. Now I'd like to zoom in and clean it up a little bit so it's nice and perfect. Oops. So that dog will hunt. Click transform. Turn off your number block. And then you see it's stretched, basically. You've kind of warped it perspectively. But we'll go back, and now we can export it again. Now you see that looks a lot nicer on the roof. Okay. This is especially helpful, and we dealt with this with Zach Millett's paint the other night, is he's got a 3-digit number on his, which, well, I've got my whole different opinion on that, but nevertheless, it makes that number fit a lot nicer on the roof compared to just shrinking it down so it fits. Okay, now you use that perspective tool, you're good to go. You don't really need to do that on the door. You can just shrink it down. Now with the 3-digit number, you might want to utilize that perspective tool to make it fit a little nicer and make it look appropriate, but not always required. Typically, you can just scale it down. So that seems to be about it. I do want to go in and show you guys one more thing related to the numbers. So we'll turn the blocks back on. I also like to name these numbers specifically, like to where they are on the truck. So we'll just call that roof. And then I'll pull another number in here. So we've got another 88 in here. And again, we're just going to scale it this time. Oops. Wrong button. Use the plus sign to zoom in. Control-Shift-J if you want to make it just perfectly full screen. Okay, if you're zoomed in too far and you want it just back where you started, Control-Shift-J, another shortcut to use. Now, I also like to remember, like, say this is the scale I want to go with. You see up here the width says 330. Just remember that or write it down for when you do the driver's side. You rotate it and then just boom, you know right where you need to be. All right, so we're going to turn off the number block again, export it another time. And you'll see that that pops up. Now, look, you see the same issue we had with the stickers for the contingencies. We got the same problem with the number. You've got the highly reflective spec map, okay, that comes in here and messes with that. So, now I think that blue layer we talked about in the spec map, you can play with that to make this look super chrome. I know that's one of the new things. It's really more to add like a clear coat effect to the paint. Again, I haven't had too much time to mess with it yet. We'll get to that at a later date. But either way, you still need to clean this up. So in the way that we do that, we'll go back to the paint. Zoom in a little bit here. And while we're at it, let's name it right side. So right side number is selected. Now, effectively, if you look at the paint in the renderer, you've got this big shark fin in the way. You don't want that. But it's not just the white we want to correct because it's really doing it to all the colors within that number itself. So go back to the paint, and depending on how you want to do this, I usually go select by color, and I'll click that. Now all that's done is select the white within the paint. And if you go up to your spec, you see that it's outlined here. And that's only the white part of your number. But now if I want, I can go to my red base paint 2, which is the reflectivity, and erase. See, now all that goes behind it. We'll go export to spec map now because we're not playing with the number. And there you have it. Most of it is fixed. There's still this little edge we got to take care of, but that's fine. We can go fix that. Did I just miss it? Yeah, that's all it was. I just missed it. There, it's fixed. So back to the paint again. We're going to Control-Shift-A to deselect. Turn your spec map off. But now we want to correct. It's very difficult to see. Let me try and zoom in here. You guys can see what I'm talking about. But you see, you got this bright red here on the number, but then it gets kind of dark because it's catching that spec map, that reflectivity. You get that high reflectivity, but it actually seems to darken the color itself. It's just detail work, but you're going to spend the time to do your own custom paint with custom numbers and all that. You want it to be right. So, back to the paint again, into GIMP. Zoom in the best we can here, and custom numbers, right side, because that's the number set that we're playing with. I go select by color again, and now you see the outside line. The outline has been selected. Now, there's a couple of spots that don't quite get it, okay? So I'm going to press and hold the Shift key while I start clicking different pixels. I'll zoom in a little more so you can see it, but you can see some of these things are not quite selected. And I'm going to select the black too because that doesn't need any reflectivity. We're trying to get this whole image to look proper. And honestly, you could even go back into the white. You could do this the first time instead of going back and forth as well. A couple of stragglers. You can let go of the shift key, just don't click the screen again with it not held down. You can zoom in, zoom out without pressing the shift key. But that's really what you're trying to do here, is just make sure all this within the number is properly selected. Now what happens here is if you click these pixels, every time you click a pixel like this, any other pixel that matches that color will be selected, at least when you're using select by color. It'll seek it out. I didn't know that early on, and I went through and did it one pixel at a time, which it's not fun. There's some more stragglers. All right. Just about enough here. That's close enough. We'll get to it. So Control-Shift-J just to go back up. You see this is all circled, all highlighted, outlined, very similar to how we did with the channels early on. So we go back up to our spec map once again, and you can see it. It's all highlighted. So red channel, that's because that's what we want to remove. Erase button or tool, and then boom. Okay. Then we export it again, and then take a close look. She's happy again. Okay. Now, there's a little bit of overlap you can see, which that's because we went real crazy with clicking everything. If you get in real close, it's as far as I can really see here, but it removed some of the spec map for the actual paint on the truck itself. It's just kind of the nature of the beast, but you can see it this close, but out here you can't. And honestly, if you're on a broadcast or in a race or anything like that, you're not going to see this issue. But if you're a perfectionist, you can go in manually and fix that. But I'd probably do it personally, but for the sake of the video, it's not going to happen. So that about sums it up for now. Spec mapping, using your channels to paint. Again, this is just how I do it. This is not the method that I would say you have to do it in, but it does make it easier, and it does clean up your paint lines in between colors. Also makes your spec mapping a little more precise as well. Fancy tool with perspective tool, moving the numbers on the roof the right way. Just some options for you guys. So that's going to wrap it up. I might do more of these. I might not. I don't know. Something different. I got bored. I had the time. Hope it works for you guys, and maybe we'll see you at the next one. Thanks.